got to the house, put it on my computer, and was angrily searching up the CBIT tournament because at that point in the season, that's where I thought we were going. We had 12 losses.
You never take those odds against the Mike Anderson team.
That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to The Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
I'm Joe Howie.
And we're here with another Big East breakdown. Now it's time for St. John's, coming in at 9th in the Big East coaches preseason rankings. And the leading story for this team is head coach Mike Anderson going into his second year, finally starting to get himself settled into the Big East. He spent quite a while at Arkansas, where he actually, for reference here for you Friars fans, he had a better record than Ed Cooley through roughly the same number of games at Arkansas that Cooley had at Providence when Mike Anderson got fired 2 years ago, and Mike Anderson's Razorbacks beat Ed Cooley's Friars in the NIT at the Dunkin' Donuts Center quite handily, as I'm sure many Friars fans would like to forget. Joe, what's your take on Anderson as the head coach for St. John's?
Well, just to make a note about that NIT Mike Anderson Ed Cooley game, man, that was a doozy. That was an awful, awful game to watch. The Friars did not make the NCAA tournament after an abysmal Big East run, and everyone kind of reluctantly went to the dunk, and the team included. You could see from tip-off they just were not into it, and the Razorbacks, they had their way with the Friars that night. But anyway, I think Mike Anderson's actually doing a pretty good job at St. John's. I think, there was definitely a learning curve early on in the season. You could see that he wasn't adjusted to playing Big East teams night in and night out. But looking at the comparison between Mike Anderson and the former head coach for St. John's, Chris Mullen, you can definitely see a change in attitude with the Red Storm. For example, I think it was St. John's at Villanova back when Shamori Pons was still on the team about 2 seasons ago, 2018, 2019. Game was coming down to the end. It was a tight game. Shamori Pons inbounds the ball. He brings it up. And instead of waiting for a play from his coach, he takes it right to the rack, gets stuffed by one of the Villanova guys. They turn it over. Villanova shoots a three-pointer, make it, and then the same thing happened. So you saw a lack of discipline under that Chris Mullen team. However, with this Mike Anderson team, you're seeing a composed offense. You're seeing players playing with and for one another, and they're actually listening to their coach and playing structured basketball, which was definitely, I think, a pan to the head for the Friars when we went into Carnesecca and lost by 12 to the Red Storm earlier this year.
Yeah, Friars lost 80-69, had a whole bunch of turnovers in that one. And I mean that was the last time the Friars lost last season. And not only that, St. John's winning that one. St. John's beat Creighton by 20 near the end of the regular season. They beat Marquette in the regular season finale, knocked off Georgetown by double digits in the Big East tournament. And then, right when everything came to a screeching halt in the Big East tournament, St. John's actually had a lead over Creighton at the half. So, I mean, this is a team that started to put things together in some ways at the end of last year.
Matt, it's actually funny you say that. St. John's is actually noted as recording the last made field goal of the 2019-2020 college basketball season. As you and I very well know, the Big East was the only conference tournament to actually begin games on March 13th. So right before halftime, St. John's hit a two-pointer before the tournament got canceled. It was actually, looking back at it, we were there, we witnessed history, and we also witnessed the St. John's Bird sitting in the stands by himself when the tournament got called, which was, now looking back, I can laugh at that and think that it's hilarious, but in the moment, I was just not having it at all.
Yeah, it was certainly a surreal experience. But bringing it back to this 2020-2021 St. John's team, man, that's a mouthful to say those two back to back. The catalyst for their run at the end of last year was LJ Figueroa Now he's gone. He has transferred to Oregon. Mustafa Heron, who they lost to injury about halfway through last season, has graduated. Who's left for St. John's? Who's going to be leading the charge?
I really like Rasheem Dunn. He's a transfer. He's going to be a senior. He's a 6'2", 190-pound point guard, averaged 3.5 assists last season, and he was third on the team in scoring with just under 12 points per game. I really like him, and it's not because his last name is Dunn, and there's no relation to Chris Dunn, but I think he's a gritty little point guard. I remember when we played them at Carneseca, he was really dicing up Pipkins, and to watch that, I mean, at the time it wasn't a surprise because everyone was disappointed in Pipkins, but I was actually impressed with the way he was playing compared to Shamori Pons, who was the previous point guard for St. John's. Rasheem Dunn has really turned it around and turned into, a good little floor general for the Johnnies. So I like him a lot. He was third in scoring behind LJ Figueroa and Mustafa Heron last season. So expect him to make a jump and potentially lead the team in scoring. Matt, what do you think about him?
I mean, he's definitely got to be the player to watch. This is a St. John's team that really struggled to score last year, and you lose your two best scorers. The burden's all going to fall undone. So he's going to have to step up. I think that points per game number is definitely going to increase. The question is whether it's going to be because of volume or efficiency, and that's yet to be determined. Outside of him, I mean, you got some other guys on St. John's that are returning. Marcus Erlington, who's going to provide a little bit of a veteran presence, Greg Williams Jr., Josh Roberts, all guys who bring back experience. And I'm definitely going to butcher the name, Julian Champagny. Is that it,
Matt,
Joe?
I'm going to be honest. I was actually about to bring him up after Rasheem Dunn, but I did not know how to say his last name, so I was hoping you would. I think it's Champagny. I think that's
Yeah,
how Gus
that's it.
Johnson said it, so that's
It's Champagny,
but
that's what it is. It's been a while since we've done the game prep with all the pronunciations here. But yeah, Champagny, he's from Brooklyn and averaged just under 10 points as a freshman last year. So, I mean, he's 6'7", big guy who's definitely going to shoulder a lot of that load.
what I like about him is he's 6'7", 220 pounds, and he plays the wing. And Matt, you know this. I love lanky wing players because I think that now that college basketball is moving towards a more positionless offense, I love the long wing players that can play the two but can also play the four. So I think as he develops into his role a little more, is going to become a matchup nightmare. Another thing that I love to talk about, especially because Providence was filled with matchup nightmares. But anyway,
Yeah.
Champagny,
For all you listeners, if you hate the words matchup nightmare, then this is not the podcast for you.
absolutely not. I have it tattooed across my chest. But anyway, I think he's going to be a matchup nightmare offensively and defensively. These longer guys, these longer positionless wing guards, wing forwards, they are so tough on defense. Like a Greg Gant from Providence or a former Paul Reed from DePaul. These guys are tough to play offense against because they can just disrupt you in a variety of different ways, specifically with their length.
Yeah, and I mean he's not the only one. If we turn to some of the other some of these newcomers for St. John's, you've got a grad transfer in Arnaldo Toro, who's 6'9", and then of the four guys that St. John's is bringing in, two of them are JUCO kids, Vince Cole and Isaiah Moore, who are 6'6" and 6'9" respectively, both top 25 JUCO recruits. So I mean, there's more length, more size right there, and I don't think anybody's quite sure what these guys are going to bring off the bat. But for a defense that already forced a lot of steals last year and made things difficult for opposing offenses, I see no signs of that getting easier for these other Big East offenses.
And don't sleep on the JUCO guys coming in. I think JUCO transfers are some of the toughest players to enter Division One. I mean, they're coming in with a chip on their shoulder. They earned it. They earned their way into the big leagues, and now they're going to show what they've done. So don't sleep on those two guys either. I think they're going to be tough outs.
Yeah, and I think toughness, that right there has to be the word for St. John's, and they're not going to score a lot. They're bringing back a lot of rebounding, but they were not a very good rebounding team last year. But they're bringing back a lot of guys. They've got a lot of length, and they played aggressively last year. And what's going to keep them in games is being tenacious, being physical, and forcing the offense by taking the ball away from the other team.
I agree, Matt. And just some final remarks real quick. I also think that St. John's, similar to DePaul, is ranked too low in the coaches poll. I mean, eventually I'll give what I have as my preseason Big East rankings. But again, I think St. John's was a little snubbed, probably because of their performance in past seasons. But I think they should be a little bit higher than ninth.
Yeah, I roughly agree with their spot, but I mean it's tough. Nobody really knows what to expect out of the Big East this year, and also I know you're trying to end it here, but we do have one more thing. We have a schedule. No
Oh yeah,
schedule out yet
yeah.
for Georgetown or DePaul, so we couldn't talk about that at all. But we do have one for St. John's. They have one game yet to be announced on November 25th, plus a game against LaSalle, a neutral site against Boston College, a road game at Texas Tech, and then two more home ones against Sacred Heart and Fordham. I'll give you the last word, Joe. What do you think about that opening non-conference slate for the Johnnies?
I think LaSalle should be a win. The Boston College game, you mentioned it's a neutral site. It's at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, which in theory should be a home game for Boston College. But there will be no fans this season. So actually, it still is a home game for Boston College because their fans don't show up to anything. But anyway,
Heyo. We'll add in like the rim shot sound effect here.
but anyway, side note: Ashton Lankford, former Providence point guard, also plays for BC. Be interesting to watch him. At Texas Tech, that's going to be a tough one. If St. John's defense can stifle them, I think that'll be a close game. Then their versus Sacred Heart and versus Fordham should be 2 wins. But other than that, for that small non-conference, St. John's really needs to clean up and then enter Big East with a couple of wins under their belt.
Yeah, I mean, you heard it right there from Joe Howie. St. John's has an opportunity for a strong start to this season. This has been The Flex. You can check back here tomorrow for our season preview of Butler. And you can follow us on Twitter at The Flex Hoops. But for Joe Howie, I am Matt St. Jean, and thank you for listening.
Go Friars.